Hi, my name's Charlie Akers, and my research topic was over how journalism social media is helping journalism, um, and how the positive effects that social media has on journalism. My presentation here is going to argue that social media is helping journalists, and that journalism should embrace social media in order to continue to still be around in years to come. The goal of my research is to show that social media, like I said earlier, positively affects journalism, and I'll also show what it means for the future of journalism. What we know now is that newspapers and other forms of traditional media, whether it be print with newspapers and magazines, or TV news, which is still the number one way people get their news. Online and social media are slowly catching up, but TV is still number one. But we know that newspapers, like I said, newspapers and traditional media, like the other forms just listed, are declining, and people are starting to turn to the internet to get their news, but they're not everyone's getting their primary news from there as of right now. What people may not have considered about social media and journalism, a lot of people are thinking that social media is the end to journalism and not a way to help. A lot of people are saying that because of Twitter and Facebook, Reddit, all the other different forms of social media, that it's going to take away from journalism and journalists, and that idea is going to just disappear. But people haven't thought how journalists can use social media to help them get the news out, get their stories out faster, and how just social media can positively help make journalism even better than what it is, and make it back to where people are using news sources and news sites more than social media for getting their news. And what I mean is that they're going to use the social media used by the news outlets versus the social media used by your average everyday person or your citizen journalist, which I'll be talking about later. This problem is important, mainly to journalists, because obviously without journalism or without the idea of journalism, then journalists don't have a job, and with the idea of social media coming in, then there are no jobs for the journalist. I believe that social media is the next stage for journalism, and journalists should embrace the idea of using social media. A man by Nick Newman did a study on social media and its role in journalism, and he came to the conclusion that there's 3 reasons to help tell better stories, make better relationships, there's 3 reasons that social media helps, and it's to tell better stories, make better relationships, and getting new people to come visit your news website or watch you on TV or subscribe to your magazine or newspaper. So now really to get into the details of my argument, of my research. First of all, my first argument will be that Twitter makes it easier for journalists to do their job, and that journalists need to use Twitter in a better way to help them report, and by using Twitter they can reach a wider audience, and they can get their news out quicker to people, so they will start going to them over a citizen journalist or someone else like that, where they can actually go and get their news from the news itself. And Blassingame, his Dale Blassingame, he's a social media director and for an internet marketing company. He started Lead Hub in San Antonio. He's also a journalism professor at Texas State. But he said that technologies such as Twitter have created new means for news organizations to communicate with viewers and readers. And by that, he's just saying it's another outlet for journalists and news organizations to get their information out to people in a better way. A way that more people are, of a younger generation are starting to use Twitter and Facebook and other social media. And he's just saying that Twitter is a way to reach that generation, to get them to read your news. And then also, Alfred Hermida, he's an award-winning British online news pioneer. He's a digital media scholar and journalist educator, currently over in England at the University of British Columbia. Or actually, not in British, in Canada. My mistake on that. But he teaches a lot of classes with online social media and things like that. And he talks about how Twitter makes it easier for everyone to report. He says that anyone can report something using Twitter, but it helps journalists because they cannot make it to a place to report news first. And it's handy for journalists to then go on to Twitter, read what's going on, and if they don't have access to a place, then they can read up on what's going on there, and then they can report on it. He's the example of June 2009, when there was an earthquake that struck in China, and actually it was May 2008. Once again, excuse me. And it was an example of how media flows are changing, and how at this earthquake, the people obviously here in the United States or anywhere else around the world besides in China could not go there and report on what's going on. Just the people that are there, and then some of even the Chinese journalists couldn't get access to, well, not just access, just couldn't get there because of the earthquake. And he was talking about how there was people that actually who felt the earthquake and were unable to get people, or the people were hard to get rescued from where they were, and how they were tweeting out and Facebooking, or the Chinese forms of Twitter and Facebook. They were just saying how it's hard, or how they were stuck, what's going on. And the journalists in China were able to go to their respective social medias, see what the people are saying, and then they were able to just grab that information and then turn around and report it themselves from a source of someone that was there, because they couldn't get there. Thus, Twitter made it easier for them to go there, not actually go there, but get the information to report it, so that they could then turn around and produce a story themselves. This data supports this argument because it shows how Twitter exactly helps journalists. It shows that the example with China again, that the journalists are able to go on Twitter and get things from people that are there firsthand, when a journalist may not be able to be there, or even around the world, because it was a fairly big earthquake that happened then, and it was news all around the world about how devastating it was. And the journalists here in America were not able to go over there, and they used Twitter to help them. A counterclaim to this would be that Twitter can move things too quickly. The information can get out faster than you may want it. The information there may not be always 100% accurate. It's out there quick. Most people using Twitter don't double check their facts. They just tweet it out, and then it is what it is. And to go against that, you just need to know to turn on your crap detection, as we talked earlier in the class. You just need to know, you need to be able to read and understand what the situation itself, and then use your best judgment and decide who is actually right, what is right, what information are you hearing from other people, and know that that stuff is correct. And then once you find out what is correct, the news stations can then turn around and report it themselves. For the second argument, now I'm going to give the other side of the argument, where people say that social media is bad for journalists and have a negative effect on journalism. We all know that newspapers are slowly going away, and people want news from the internet. Bloggers are becoming a bigger and bigger online presence, and something that people are starting to read more than newspapers and other forms of actual journalism. the blogs and social media sites are taking things away from journalists and the journalist page, the news sites. Another way that blogs are helping journalists out is that bloggers are blogging about things that a news outlet may not necessarily want to pay a professional journalist to go out and cover. Your movie reviews, your smaller little like dog shows, for example. But movie reviews, video game reviews, kind of really just about any review. You can Google the movie, the video game, the event, and just type in that review, and you're going to get many different blogs about that. And that's helping journalists, because by doing that, then they don't have to have one of the reporters go out and cover this or write about it, and they can have them focus on something else, more newsworthy, something more important. And that's another way that blogs are actually helping the journalist out, or bloggers, I should say, are helping the journalist out. But like I said, I still believe that besides the few reviews here and there, that citizen journalism will start to die down when journalists start to blog more. Now, in conclusion, as I've said, we know that social media is starting to become the way people get their news, and that when used correctly, it'll help traditional news outlets like TV stations, magazines, print, that being newspaper. When they start using social media, it will start helping them, because they've been declining going back due to not being up to date with the social media. But we know that Twitter and blogs specifically can help journalists report the news, as I've stated. And it gets out to the public and to their viewers faster, and they are more accurate and more trusted than a citizen journalist. So, out of all the sources, there may be a few. There was one source I had, Demir's, who said that social media was bad for journalists, and that it's going to kill the journalism art or the craft of journalism. He was just saying how it's bad for it, as I stated earlier in my argument. But out of all the other sources, it's very clear that when journalists start to use social media properly, they are going to be the idea of journalists going away is going to be gone. They will come back, and it'll be used more. People are going to start reading the news more and finding out. They'll be more informed because of it. Now, I couldn't prove the exact number of news outlets using or not using social media, because there's just not a study that shows the number. There's too many news outlets throughout the U.S. and around the world to know exactly how many were shut down due to social media. But sources just say that there's a majority that are starting to use social media to help counterbalance and not get shut down. Like I said, we all know newspapers are declining because of online journalism, being the citizen journalist. But I could not find the statistics of how many have closed, like I said. So, with that being said, yes, there's a relationship between social media and and news outlets shutting down, but there's not a direct relationship between the two. Yes, that is causing it, but there might have been other things that went into the journalist or the news outlet having to close the doors and having to lay people off. But when journalists learn how to use social media properly, and when they start using Twitter, it will help them get their news out faster, and it will just be the journalist will be trusted more now, and then the whole citizen journalist and things coming out that aren't true all online are just not going to exist anymore. Thanks.